perhaps an interesting intersection of this idea of neurochemistry and psychology and universities and sciences. Recently, I was asked to give a talk at Stanford to a bunch of potential donors, and on the stage next to me was Michael Pollan, who I have tremendous respect for.
Love that guy.
Yeah, even though he's over at Berkeley, like we tolerate him. No, I'm kidding, Michael. That's a Stanford Berkeley joke. He is wonderful and amazing and such a pioneer of this whole psychedelic space. And you might say, well, there were others. There's Terence McKenna and there's the classic people. But I started off that evening by saying we need to take a step back and just acknowledge what's happening here, which is saying the word psychedelics on a podcast for me 5-6 years ago could have cost me my job. Easily. Saying, yeah, I've taken MDMA as part of a clinical trial 3 times. It was tremendously beneficial. I think psilocybin can aid with depression. That would have cost me my job. Done. Fired. I would have walked out of here. Done. Now, just this last month, the cover of UCSF magazine and Stanford magazine, Alice in Wonderland, psychedelics, deep feature about MDMA, ketamine, psilocybin, DMT. What's happened now is this is what used to cost university professors their jobs in the 60s and 70s, and did cost them their jobs at places like Harvard in particular, is now the subject of research studies, clinical studies at Stanford and elsewhere, right? UCSF, Johns Hopkins. This is now really big science, and pharma is moving in very quickly. What they're trying to do is create non-psychedelic psychedelics, figure out what sorts of chemistry changes that doesn't give you hallucinations and create new antidepressants. That's what they want to do with psilocybin, because doing 2 journeys on a drug and then you're done, that's not good business. And what I love about what Michael Pollan is saying is that he's the one that's really hitting the drum on this one. He's saying these things work. The clinical data are showing that 65% plus success rate for what would otherwise be intractable, untreatable suicidal depression. Incredible. And now the universities are behind it. But they're behind it because laboratories are getting funded to do it. Laboratories are getting funded to do it because there are grants. Why are there now grants from the federal government? Well, philanthropists came in early and provided money. And now people are starting to see that there are big, big potential outcomes at the level of pharma. Now, the classic psychedelics community isn't going to like that. They're like, no, this is plant medicine. It's got a 100,000-year history or more, indigenous people, et cetera. Academia and pharma don't care about that. And I'm one of these people. I'm not saying they're bad and they're good. I'm saying that it's humans again. So why are universities suddenly okay with the idea of discussions about psychedelics in front of their top tier donors, the people that literally supply the blood to the university? Well, because top tier donors are now really interested in psychedelics. So what drives every aspect of it, from the student who's pipetting in the lab to the highest tier of administration in the university, all the way up to directors of NIH, it's all interconnected at the level of incentives.
Right, but the top tier donors are clearly influenced by the zeitgeist. And the way people have approached and thought about psychedelics has radically changed completely over the last 10 years. And Michael Pollan is one of the reasons for that, because the omnivore's dilemma, he had established himself as a legitimate journalist who would comb through and parse through all the data to give you a comprehensive understanding of what exactly is going on.
And he went out and did them, or at least some of them, as a kind of late, typical person, not didn't come out with wearing a robe,
right?
Or sit in the lotus position.
And he can discuss them like a journalist,
right?
And then having podcasts discuss it, then you're getting these positive drug stories out to, and I don't even like calling them drugs, positive compound stories about psychedelics that are going out to millions and millions and millions of people. And you're hearing about these people, particularly soldiers who are coming back with PTSD, who are having tremendous results. People with overwhelming depression, people with all sorts of problems with drug addiction and so many different ailments that are being helped in this way.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, you deserve tremendous credit here. I know you're not one to sit here and take praise from your guests, but I'm going to just say that you've been talking about this for a long time, about the tremendous value of these things, not just for gaining new perspective, because I think in the 60s and 70s it was tune in and drop out, right? Now we're talking about the use of psychedelic medicine to be able to lean into life in a healthy way.
Yeah.
That's the major difference. And you've really pioneered the discussion around that, Michael Pollan, and there are others too, I realize. But at a time when it was considered really wacky and out there, now it's headed towards mainstream medicine. And I think it's fundamentally important. I mean, I think Robin Cardard-Harris's laboratory at UCSF has a paper out just today on the use of DMT for treatment of psychiatric illness. His laboratory has been looking at high-dose psilocybin, 2 sessions, guided sessions, treatment of anorexia, ADHD, and depression with very high success. Nolan Williams' lab at my university at Stanford. He's a triple board certified psychiatrist, neurologist, running the studies with Veteran Solutions, the group down in Mexico of tier 1 operators and other people who come back who are just messed up. They're either heading towards suicidal depression or they're just not feeling quite right, and using ibogaine DMT in tandem and getting tremendously positive results. So he's doing the neuroimaging on them. So times are really changing, and you and Michael and others really deserve a token of gratitude. I've completely revamped my stance on psychedelics. I'm still yet to do a high-dose psilocybin journey. I haven't done that yet.
What was your original stance on psychedelics?
I don't want to lose my job. And I'll be honest, so I was kind of a wild youth, barely finished high school, and I did recreationally. I took LSD and psilocybin in high school, hung around with a wild bunch, and we were just partying with it. I didn't know what I was doing. So my view of it was associated with a time in my life where I was pretty wayward.
Right.
Then I never touched it. I drank a little bit, smoked a little bit of weed here and there, but never really liked weed very much. It just wasn't my thing. And then when I did this 3 sessions with MDMA, that completely transformed my understanding of how these drugs work. I also realized, and you probably already know this, but I was very curious about MDMA and the reputation that puts holes in the brain, kills serotonin neurons. The study on MDMA that showed neurotoxicity was retracted from science. They actually inadvertently injected methamphetamine into those monkeys. But you never hear about that.
How do you inadvertently inject methamphetamine?
You don't hear
I thought it was aspirin.
Yeah, you don't hear about that retraction. You hear
it
that.
was meth.
So they now have data in humans asking what are the safety profiles on MDMA for people that take it every once in a while to people who have taken hundreds of dosages of MDMA. And there's one population of people that you can do this on that makes it a really good experiment. Those people can't do any other drugs because then it becomes confounded by are they doing meth, are they doing coke, are they taking psilocybin, what else? It's not a good experiment. You want single variable manipulation. There's only one group that you can do that on, and that's who they did it on, and that's Mormons. So the Church of Latter-day Saints, it has one drug that's not on the banned substance list, and that's MDMA.
Wow.
And I'm not saying all
they
Mormons
can't even drink coffee.
It makes an even better experiment. And so I'm not saying that Mormons are all taking MDMA, but there is a substantial number of LDS, Latter-day Saints, I think they call themselves now Mormons, as most people know them, who have taken tons of MDMA. And they've done brain imaging and psychiatric profiles on them. Those data say that as long as it's not contaminated with something else, which is a serious issue, the neurotoxicity is nil to none.
Wow.
Amazing, right? At the appropriate dosages, et cetera.
That's amazing.
Amazing. And
the problem
so
is
I've changed my stance.
Contaminated MDMA is super common.
The recent data I saw was that you go out and buy MDMA from a quote-unquote trusted source, and 6 out of 10 are going to have potentially lethal levels of fentanyl in them.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
6 out of 10.
Yeah, and everyone nowadays knows to say, oh, this is from MAPS, because it's like saying, it's clean, right?
Yeah.
So, in any way, I've completely changed my stance on psychedelics.